Fnatic topple G2 and are your spring split champions.
3 rookies prove themselves worthy of the top 4 in the EU LCS. A double kill from Perks! This guy is a madman! He can do it! Oh, Memento! You beautiful man!
Yes, the Quadra! Gotta be a pacer for Kobe!
It's time to find out who will rise. This is the EU LCS. Welcome everyone to Berlin, Germany for the final weekend of the regular season. With Fnatic in sole possession of first place, our eyes are on the other top contenders to challenge them in the fight for first. I'm Eva Schock supporter, joined by Dan Foxdrop White and Andrew Verius Day.
Hi Sharks, hi Dan.
I was told to say a British duo,
Yes.
because if I said English, then it would exclude Mr. from Wales right here. So
Mr. from Wales, it's true. I am Welsh. We are separate from England, the less superior country in the Great British Isles.
The less superior, yeah. You know what? Let's just.
No.
He is. We'll just. I'm feeling a bit of a rage coming on. That's why I'm wearing my red shirt. Anger. All right, ready, mate.
All right, we'll see how it goes, mate.
All right, we'll see how it goes.
Open that can of worms or can of tea or whatever. Last week we have our 6 playoff teams, but their seeding is still left to be decided. Right now, Fnatic holds sole possession of first place, but Fnatic, G2, Misfits, Vitality, and Schalke are all fighting for first place. Now, that last team in the playoff splice is now in 6th and can only, at best, get 5th. They're excluded at the race for, well, anything above 5. But that fight for first, the last time it was this close, I can't really remember. Some people tweeted at me that 2013 was pretty close as well, but arguably this is a very, very stacked top 6 and maybe one of the most stacked top 6s we've had in a long time.
Yeah, back in 2013, League of Legends was easy. Right now, League of Legends is extremely difficult, and that's why we have such a competitive stacked top half of the bracket. Our playoff teams are going to be fighting neck and neck to try and secure that first place spot, because even though things don't look likely, it is all very possible for every team to secure it.
And when we, of course, look at Fnatic first, they are now sole possession of first place with this guy, the man in the mid lane. And Foxdrop, I don't think there's any arguments against the fact that they have looked the absolute strongest team in the last couple of weeks, or is there?
No, honestly, I would agree with that. I think Fnatic, they are the team to beat right now, especially now that Rexus has come back in. We want to see what they can do with that man in the bot lane again, their superstar. But all of these teams have a chance of finishing in that top spot. Can Misfits pull out a reverse Misfits? Maybe they can find their first half form. I think they have the potential to do so, potentially with an AD carry meta coming back in. Maybe it will happen. Or maybe G2 as well. We know they have a huge, I can't use the L word here, but they their past performances in the history of their organization have led us to believe that they have the potential to do it too.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. We haven't even mentioned Schalke, and that for me is one of the biggest stories coming into this weekend. You're also appropriately dressed for it. Verius Schalke, who had a disastrous spring split, who didn't have the best beginning of summer split, are now one of the best teams in Europe. What
yes, they are. Every single member of that team has just improved so much. Originally, it was all about Nuke Duck. We talked about the year of the duck, the day of the duck, the deficio of the duck. Everything was about this man in the mid lane. But he has developed into not just the sole carry. When you look at players like Chachi, Upset, Amazing, everyone has kind of grown and come together. And now you have this well-oiled machine that is challenging the other top teams that we have in Europe. And right now, they're in contention of securing that top 2 spot.
And they get then a bye. They don't have to play the quarterfinals and would go straight to the semifinals, which is a reward that they would be given for ending in the top 2. We'll see what happens, but I do want to know from you guys who will be our number 1 and number 2 at the end of week 9.
Foxdrop, come on, tell me.
Ooh, I think it's hard to argue against Fnatic in that first place. I think they're looking really solid. They already have that game in hand as well, right?
I'm gonna say, by the way, they are up versus Roccat and the Unicorns of Love, but if there's ever a moment where things like this happen, where these teams drop games, it is week 9, so I wouldn't be too sure that they just clean it out with a very clean 2-0. Just saying, saying.
I mean, that's fair to say as well. I think from what we can analytically say, I'm going to put Fnatic at the top spot. But number 2 is really up for grabs. I personally, I'm going to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo, G2. I think G2 can be in that second spot. This is the
hard-hitting analysis we hire Foxdrop for.
Yep, and that's why I'm bottom of the predictions.
For me, as you both said, Fnatic is kind of my clear number 1 right now. and Schalke looks to be the number 2, largely because of their strength of schedule. I feel like going up against Splice this week will be a very exciting match, but given that I expect them to take it, they should be in a good spot.
All right, we'll see. We also want to know what you guys think at home. Who will end in the top 2 and get those buys at the end of week 9? Tweet us your opinion at LOL Esports using that hashtag #FightForFirst and hashtag ReadyCheck and hashtag Let's Go. No, just kidding. You can always invent hashtags if you want, but that would be diluting from our own hashtags. So I shouldn't have said that. Ignore that.
Hashtag #FightForFirst. Let's go.
Yes. Well, as we're approaching the start of the summer playoffs, we also wanted to check out some player champion combos that could have a great impact. And if you have a favorite one, you can join in the discussion by spamming the name of the champion in chat. And Verius is going to show you which champions you can vote for and which players can vote.
Yes, Shock. So the 3 champions you have to choose from are Trundle, Pyke, and Poppy. These were played by Kikis, Hylissang, and Vizicachi, respectively. Now, we got to start off with Vitality's jungler, Kikis. After joining this roster, the team went on a 5-1 tear. He seems to change the entire game plan when you look at how this team operates, and it's working beautifully. So much counter jungling, still a lot of early game impact, a lot of snowballing. This team just seems so much stronger since his arrival, and a lot of it came off the back of his Trundle, which he seems so proficient on. Moving on to Hylissang, if you guys haven't seen it, it's pretty terrifying. He's currently 7-0 on the champion, and when we spoke to Broxah last week, he was like, yeah, I would not ever want to play against this man's Pyke. He looks terrifying on it, finding so many fantastic roams, constantly landing the bone skewers, securing half the kills for himself. This is definitely a scary champion that teams might want to consider banning away. Our final champion and pro player is Vizicachi on the Poppy. If you guys haven't had an opportunity to see it so far this split, this guy has not made but 1, but 2 amazing plays on the Poppy that have changed an entire game in Schalke's favor. This is one of those beautiful moments, knocking 3 members away from an almost stolen Elder Drake to allow Schalke to get them back into the game. This guy is returning to form, and he is looking terrifying on the champion that he debuted to qualify for the LCS. So Twitch chat and YouTube chat and all the chats out there, you get to vote between these 3 champions, you get to vote between these 3 players, so get voting, get interacting.
Is it
Let us
Trundle,
know.
is it Pyke, or is it Poppy for Vizicachi, Hylissang, or Kikis? I think like in a competition like this, Pyke will have the upper hand just because in terms of playmaking, he is always the guy that will make the more flashy plays. But is it also the hardest ones mechanically? Maybe also, yes. I'm not sure.
I believe, and I apologize, Pulse Smith, if I'm misquoting you, that he said that Hylissang was the best Pyke in the world.
Yeah.
I believe he said
Did
that.
he say that?
And
Deficio
I know
also
we
said
said it,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, well, Deficio is slightly more biased, being the EU commentator. But I mean, there's good reason why Pyke has like 64% of the vote right now. It would be my personal vote.
It is unfair for Trundle because it's not very... He's a troll, and he's just like hitting people. It's not like he makes all the flashy plays. But
It's true.
in terms of game influence,
It's all up
Trundle
here.
on Kikis does have so much to do for
and I didn't mention it, guys, but Kikis is also undefeated on the Trundle. Chachi undefeated on the Poppy. They're all just so exceptional at these champions. It's often why we are seeing them taken away, and I expect Poppy to be banned away today.
Whilst we're making the case for Trundle, less people are voting.
Oh, no.
Okay. Yeah, it does seem that Hylissang and Pyke is what you guys at home think is the best combination. And honestly, going into playoffs, any 3 of these should be bans for the enemy team playing against these teams, especially on the Pyke. And I would also say it for the Trundle, definitely, because we've seen that they lose if he's not on Trundle.
Yes,
So
it
You
is.
know me when you said Trundle.
But I was in the general
Because there's nothing on the
area.
background here.
Just
Am I that ugly?
You're just giving us a glimpse behind the curtain. We're trying to play it off as normal. As meant to
That's
be.
harsh.
Right, so Hylissang Pyke is the most scary in terms of support.
Seems like it.
We'll see. Now, looking at the mid lane, we've also asked Verius to break down some mid lane champions that could make their way to the Rift in the next couple of
Yes, thank you, Shocks. Mid lane champions. They are my forte. I love talking about the mid lane, and we have some pretty fantastic mid laners in Europe. And do you want to know some of the overpowered mid laners? It's Nocturne in the mid lane. You guys have been waiting way too long for this guy, but it is finally here. This is the time. This is the moment. You're all going to learn about Verius' Nocturne.
So sorry about that. We told him he's not allowed to do this, so we're going to continue with the rest of our show. I bet is get something else to talk about, but he is... what?
Yeah, anyway, back on track. In this breakdown, I'll explain why Nocturne mid is a strong pick, give you some tricks and tips that you can look to use, and look at some of his strengths and weaknesses along with how I build Nocturne so you can build him the same way as well. So, let's start off with why does Nocturne mid lane even work? The first thing is that he has very strong wave clear, largely thanks to his Q, the Duskbringer, combined with his passive. It does a lot of area of effect damage, it gives you bonus AD, and overall, it's great for killing those pesky minions. On top of that, he has a huge amount of kill threat thanks to his ultimate, right? Now, not only does it have a huge amount of burst damage, but when you combine it with the bonus AD that you get from your Q and all the extra stuff that he has in his kit, oh, it's scary, and you'll get to see a look at that a little bit later on. When you combine these two things together, you end up with an impactful roaming champion that can affect all the other lanes around the map. He has a long range thanks to the ult, and he gets that extra bit of mobility on his Q. So, a lot of reasons as to why this can work. Now that you know that, let's look at some of the tips and tricks you need to be aware of about the mid lane Nocturne champion. First off, when you're looking to trade with your opposition, utilize your passive. You get more healing for every single target that you hit. So if you're standing in the middle of minions and you're trying to fight someone, you can get so much more healing back when you're going for those early trades. On top of that, his ultimate can ignore crowd control. Here's a great example from Yasuo's Q, where you can just ignore that CC because you're unstoppable, meaning you can make a lot of cool outplays and get into the thick of fights. On top of that, make sure that you're always standing on your Q when you go for fights. It gives you a lot of bonus AD. It's where a lot of your early damage comes from, so you're definitely going to want to stand on top of that. Moving into some fun facts, did you know that Nocturne passively gets attack speed on his W? Unlike Olaf, who when he ults loses the passive bonus stats he gets, Nocturne gets to keep it. So spam that W as often as you like. On top of that, his fear is a thread, which means that it will stay on even if Vladimir pulls, Elise repels, or if champions even use Zhonya's, which means they will still be CC'd once they come out of it. Very useful tip to know. On top of that, the final fun fact is that AP on-hit Nocturne is possible. But that guide is available for another day. So now you've seen now you've seen some tips and tricks. Now we've seen some cool stuff. Let's look at what Nocturne is bad at. This guy is not a tank. He's not designed to engage. He's not designed to start fights. Any of your teammates that said so, they're just wrong. Look, yes, he does a lot of damage. He's great at getting kills, but when he's in the middle of 4 members and the team hasn't started the fight, he's just pointing a spotlight on himself and saying, oh, please come kill me, try and get me, and that's not what you want. You're an assassin. You want to dive into the backline and stay alive. So definitely don't want to be doing that. Rely on other people to actually start those fights for you. What is he good at? Killing stuff. He has giant swords for arms. What better way to do that than looking for fights in the mid lane? This is a great example. This is actually from my solo queue game, where you can see the moment I hit level 6, go for the all-in. Straight for the one-shot onto those pesky mages. You have so much burst potential, and you utilize this throughout the rest of the game. Someone trying to base in a brush? Nope, not today. Darkness, into the Q, into the passive. So much damage. You see an 80 carry sitting off on a side lane? Not anymore, you don't. You throw everything at them, and they're going to drop like flies. Finding these picks, finding these isolated kills is the best way to utilize Nocturne in the mid lane. So I can see you guys are already excited. You want to know more, so let's talk about how you build him, starting off with the runes. You'll notice there's a lot of burst. We're going to be running the Electrocute rune. Now, we don't need lethal tempo, we don't need attack speed, we just want raw burst. And the other key rune that you're going to need is this Ultimate Hunter down here as well. Reduce that ulti cooldown, because that's where a lot of your damage will end up coming from. Same for the Presence of Mind. You get all those kills, very good at reducing that cooldown, making it available pretty much all the time. In terms of skill order, because you're going to be looking for more damage and burst, you actually want to max the E second rather than the W. Get that extra fear duration, get that extra damage out. Very, very valuable. And obviously, take points in your ult whenever it is up. Finally, the itemization. You're going to be looking to start with Corrupting Potion because he has a lot of mana issues. On top of that, combine it with the Tiamat in the early game will give you a lot of wave clear to help with moving around the map, looking for roams and looking for those solo kills. Also add all that lethality in there. As you can see, the Duskblade and the Ghostblade adds mobility, combines with the burst. Absolutely valuable to have. The GA means, well, I mean, you die a lot, so you're going to need it to come back to life so that you die less. Definitely want to get your hands on that. And then round things out the Last Whisper to get those pesky tanks out of the way. Now, pros, they can't quite comprehend the ultimate strength that Nocturne mid may bring, but in time, maybe they can be swayed after watching this guide. But you guys at home shouldn't be convinced by the pros. You should be convinced by me. So jump onto the Rift and give this mid lane champion a go. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope you've been hyped after this, but we've got to move on with the rest of the show. So in order to do that, we're going to look at our match of the week that's happening later today, Misfits versus Vitality. Let's check it out.
Rise will bring in the minion wave. Vitality will find themselves another upset win today, and Fnatic will be shut down.
Another notch on the board for Vitality. They take down Fnatic. Vitality have been struggling this split. The first half, odds and ends, they looked all out of sorts, and now they needed someone to shake things up and revolutionize this team, and that's where Kikis comes in.
I bring a new perspective from the jungle. I just think every possible scenario, so I'm always ready. And I think I'm just really smart coming to the playoffs. I think that's gonna be a huge one.
Go straight on to Ruin. One more is enough. Okay. Shut down for Kikis, and that's why you bring him into your team.
4-0 in their first 4 games since he came back. He has ignited a spark underneath these Vitality members that makes me excited to watch them play.
Vitality!
Misfits were undefeated in the first half of the split, 9-0. An incredible feat, but then they started to spiral. They just weren't able to pick up a win from anywhere, even losing to the likes of Giants.
Giants destroy Misfits in their base!
Is this the Misfits that can prove they belong amongst the greats of Europe? This split, Maxlaw, he's looked like the best jungler in Europe. Consistently gets his lane ahead, plays around his weaker lanes. Everything Misfits do, they do through their jungler.
Is a massive stopwatch, and what a turnaround! Triple kill from Maxlor!
Maxler and Broxa are like the junglers I respect the most. I beat Broxa already, so I'm just curious if it's gonna be the same versus Maxler.
But this is 8-15. This is the AD carry patch, and that's where Hans Sommer thrives.
Hansama flashing forward, double kill, cleaning house!
To me, the standout players for Vitality this split have actually been Attila and Jacktroll. Attila playing mages, can also play AD carries. Jacktroll's roaming around the map, setting his team up for success. When they're given a lead in the laning phase, entirely change the landscape of a game. I actually think that they're in the running for the best bot lane in Europe.
I think we have all the chances in the world to actually make it to finals in Madrid, and I think if our team goes to Madrid, we're gonna win it.
I see an echo of the old Misfits in Vitality. 5 rookies who exploded onto the stage and took the EU LCS by storm. This is Misfits' last chance to make it to Worlds. They didn't make playoffs in spring, and they have to get to Madrid. Vitality need to prove to everyone they're not just a one-split wonder. You take down Misfits, you cement your spot at the top of EU. This is a battle to prove you belong amongst the best in Europe.
There we go, a battle to prove that you indeed belong amongst the best in Europe. A direct battle also for the fight for first. And interesting that Medic brought it up, that bottom lane matchup. And Mickey X is back in the lineup for Misfits. Last week they played with Jesses. Are we happy about that?
I'm very happy about that. No disrespect to Jesses, but I do feel that Mickey, his mechanical prowess, his playmaking ability, he just feels like the strongest support for that duo right now. And if they want to find wins, it needs to be through this bot lane.
Yeah, I've heard Mickey being touted as the best support in EU by multiple players as well. So it doesn't, all right, just on paper, maybe it is a good idea to put him into your roster.
Yeah,
Makes
exactly.
sense.
It does make sense. You would argue, you know, why the hell would you ever take him out? But that is not for us to decide. Still super excited. Misfits, as said, they had a undefeated run at the beginning of the summer split, and then they fell down greatly. So this is really their chance to salvage that top of the table. And on the other hand, Vitality could do the unthinkable and even end up in first at the end of this weekend. So it's all on the cards for these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember that for Misfits, as you rightly said, they were at a 10-0 point. Everyone expected them to just come in as the clear #1 team in Europe and not really be contested. Then that big slump happened. They're like 2-5 or 2-6, something ridiculous in the second half of the split. And you look at Vitality across the other side, they're 5-1 since Kikis joined. These guys are on the upswing while Misfits are on the downswing. And on paper, you kind of expect Vitality to be the favorites, but with the return of Mickey, it'll be exciting to see how they've developed and how this bot lane matchup will play out.
It's going to be hyped. That is our final game of the day. Now, Verius, don't think I forgot about you not respecting my authority and doing the Nocturne guide, whatever. We'll talk about that later. We are going to take a look at the schedule as said, Misfits versus Vitality will be our last game of the day. And for the rest, as said, everything is impossible. Everything is possible in the race for the seeding going into playoffs. Splice versus Schalke is a direct battle for that.
It's going to be a hype one. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm curious as to whether or not Rocket will be able to put up a good fight against Fnatic. If they are going to be causing some upsets, many of the top teams are going to be rooting and supporting for Rocket to create it happen.
And Reckless is on the lineup together with Soaz. That is a roster with Weibo
Their
out
weakness.
for today. Is that their weakness?
I don't know. We just haven't seen him play for a couple of weeks. I'm like, if you're going to attack anything, maybe attack him.
Yeah, exactly. That's always the unknown factor. I'm looking more towards the Giants G2 because we did have, not too long ago, we were talking about the miracle run for Giants, where they're actually going to be able to make the playoffs. They're looking really decent. Obviously, some things didn't work out, and that was one of them. But still, as a team, maybe they can pull out performance where they can beat a struggling G2.
Also, the last time they met, Giants took the win. So
did.
both teams looking to kind of, well, G2 looking to change things, Giants looking to create the upset.
It's rough because for G2 and all the top teams, you can't afford to lose any games, but you definitely can't drop them against those teams you should in rule beat. And then you have some very hotly contested matchups directly for the standings. We'll see what happens. The teams are fighting to become the EU LCS champions, and the on-air talent team is battling it out in the race for superior analyst. There are a couple of side battles here, I would say.
Yep.
Varius and Deficio are fighting for superior analyst.
Yep.
I think that's pretty clear. Then there's a top 3 fight where Ender's in the running, Law is in the running. She's doing very
Quickshot's
well.
there as well.
Yes. I am fighting with the fan votes. I am trying to get on top of that. And then Foxtrot is just fighting not to be
Himself. He is his own greatest enemy.
down in the dumpster. What's
You've been such a big
going on?
believer in unicorns
I
all split
know.
long.
I remember, I think it was last week, the one time I didn't vote for them, they actually won. What is up with that? See, it's not my fault, it's the teams, obviously. I predict the right teams, just the wrong teams are winning.
Today we seem to be pretty aligned, except for the Misfits Vitality, and the Fisho also voted for Misfits.
Yes. So I spoke to him earlier, and he was
Yeah.
like, so my strategy is for the rest of the split, predict what you're going to predict and do the same as you. And I'm like,
What?
you coward.
That is
he
cheating.
refuses
Did
to
he
let me...
actually say that?
Yeah, he's playing tactics right now. He doesn't want to fall behind me. So people online, get to him, message him, say that he is a coward and will not take risks. We'll see how he handles the pressure. But today, with the return of Mickey, I'm looking at Misfits, and I think they're going to take the win.
Well, Twitter also keep voting. I'm versus you guys, and I want to make up some points, although we're all the same today. But for tomorrow, I have some spicy gambles in there. So, but first today, and in our very first game, we're going to have H2K versus the Unicorns of Love. With a lot of faith from us in the Unicorns of Love. Both teams are looking to close out the season with a couple of wins. Now, we wanted to review the year for these organizations. They have both been mainstays in the EU LCS, but we can't beat around the bush. It's been disappointing for them in summer. H2K, though, had a really good spring. They came into the year when nobody expected anything from them, and they still made it to playoffs. Unfortunately, in summer, it all wasn't enough. But in terms of highlighting players, we have to talk about Sheriff. In his rookie year, he made a lot of people cognizant of his existence. Well, it was very philosophical. He crushed it on the riff.
Yeah, he really did. Like, you only have to look back to some of his spring split performances where he was able to make a lot of highlight plays. He was a big reason as to why they were able to qualify for playoffs in spring. And while this split, he hasn't had the greatest showing, a lot of it has been the changes in the meta, which Foxtrot, we were talking about it earlier, where he just wasn't quite able to adapt.
Absolutely, and it's any time that a bot lane player can still shine, like the way we're highlighting him here, when you have all these majors coming through, and who even bloody knows what's being played in the bot lane nowadays, really. Sheriff really has stood out, and let's not forget, he is a rookie this year. Spring Split was his first split, so a lot of good future things coming from Sheriff, hopefully, and yeah, this has been a successful year for him.
I do also want to bring up Kadril. He's been a bit of a controversial figure, especially in spring. He wasn't carrying his weight and he got subbed out for H2K. But in the last couple of weeks, he, for me, has been one of the best players on the roster.
Yeah, I think that H2K needed to make a change, and he was it. The irony was that he did come in place of the man who ended up replacing him, but his jungle awareness seems to be so much higher than it was in the past, and the growth that he's made while he hasn't been playing in the LCS has been noticeable. He's been a big part of why they were able to find their first win so far this split. His early game impact has been noticeable, and I just hope that he as a player will continue to grow over the next year, and we'll get to see another opportunity in the future.
And we hope for all the players that they pick up some wins in the final week. For the Unicorns of Love, sadly, it is the same story. They failed to make playoffs for the second time in their history, and that, if you look at everything together, is a tragedy rather for the organization. They did have a reset coming into the season. They lost Vizcachi, they lost Xerxes, they lost Hillesang, and they had this new lineup with Cold, with Totoro, with White Knight, and it's forever that team that people behind the scenes said they were doing good in scrims. They look relatively scary. They sometimes have really impressive wins, but it wasn't enough for them.
Yeah, I thought I had some insider knowledge with my predictions. Apparently not. No, Unicorns weren't quite living up to it, but Cold is a player here. You can see him on your screen. I think this is one of the shining points for UOL as a team. Cold has always had these consistent performances when I think UOL as a team has been mired by inconsistencies, especially from that jungle role when you're quite heavily influenced by the roles around you, the lanes around you. For him to still have decent performances, you can see from his stats here as well. CJ%, that's not a character from GTA San Andreas, that is the counter jungling right here. So he's doing a decent amount of counter jungling, middle to top of the pack for all of your stats when you're in a losing team. It's good, it's so impressive.
Yeah, I mean, for me, not only have his arms grown massively throughout the year, but he, as a player, has grown a lot as well. And the great thing about Cold is whenever you speak to a lot of the junglers in the ULCS, all of them will give him praise. And you think back to his history as a player, when he played so long on Splice, the other opportunities that he kind of explored during the offseason, eventually deciding on UOL, he's always kind of had that impact and presence. And I do hope that in the future we get to see more of him, because I think that he is a talent that shouldn't be wasted. And I think that he has so much more opportunity space in the future.
Always difficult to talk about the teams that are out of the race, but a lot of positive points on both these lineups. And one thing we also wanted to mention is the Love Hertz crew, the fans of the Unicorns of Love. We want to thank them for being here every single week and bringing all the atmosphere to the studio. That was never going to work perfectly. And honestly, all teams bring fans and bring a lot of fans, but the Unicorns of Love and the Love Hertz crew are more special than most of them. They're always very dressed up. They always bring the atmosphere, especially during this year where their team was not winning at all. They are something to look up to.
Yeah, it's always great to see passionate fans. And throughout this year, we've had some pretty fantastic audiences. We've had people come from all over Europe. But the Love Hertz crew are here every single week. They're so dedicated to the support of this team, and they show it so many times throughout the split. And they're always in great, their attire is always matching the Unicorns. There's always a good cheer for them, and you know you're always in for an exciting matchup when the crowd is so far behind what is the Unicorns of Love squad.
So many familiar faces. It's bittersweet looking at them, knowing that they will not be in playoffs. We love you guys. Thank you. And for all the fans that are come to the studio every week, I just hope that these teams that are no longer in playoffs can pick up some wins, both for H2K and for the Unicorns of Love. And it is a bit bittersweet, isn't it? This is really where we start the postseason, even though these guys still have games to play. Cole tweeted it earlier today. He said, it is so strange. You come to the studio, you're all fired up, you're all ready to go, but in the end, it doesn't really matter what you do here today. So hopefully they can end on a positive note.
They can still have fun.
Yeah. Well, can we expect that we're going to see maybe a trolley game out of these two?
A part of me wants to. I know stats don't because they always get in the way.
Yeah.
But I love them. Last year we had some pretty exciting games, like Misfits bringing out things like Teemo bot lane and Rammus top, and like I want to see it. And when both teams have nothing on the line, just give the fans a show and making it exciting.
We do still have 1 minute, so give me more ideas about crazy stuff that will happen.
I think it's kind of ironic if you took a look.
Nocturne mid.
If
Exile plays Nocturne mid, oof.
They could do it. You know what? Maybe they've been inspired by your Ready Check moment. Maybe that's probably what they've all got on their screens right here. Just watching Ready Check, waiting for your Nocturne mid moment. Anxiously preparing for that Nocturne mid.
I can see Exile doing it.
Yeah.
You know, okay, so fun fact: Selfie has actually done it once before.
Yeah.
He did it in the UK many years ago when you guys did a road show there.
You're reaching.
But he did it into Cassidy, which is one of his best matchups. So maybe he goes back. He remembers the good old days.
Since we are all the way down to talking about Nocturne mid, and it's a serious topic, we're going to leave it to the casters and see what the final weekend of the regular season